Welcome to Chew the Chat podcast.
Welcome to Chew the Chat podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Georgia Goodman, you are a student. You are somebody who is experiencing strange circumstances at the moment as you try and learn, as you pay for your education. In a time of digital madness and expectations for young women and young people in general, there's a really strange kind of paradox of things happening where we're all trapped in our houses and can't see loved ones, we can't do physical, tactile things. At the same time as our digital online presence and social media and the whole pressure of peers and expectation, especially for women, young women, is at its all-time high. So I'm interested to hear your point of view and how are you coping and what are any remedies, if any?
What do you want me to answer first? Yeah, it is a weird time. It's really strange, especially being a student. Like, you have all these expectations of university and what it's going to be like and your first year and all the things you're going to do. So obviously, like, I was in my first year of uni when lockdown happened, and it was just as I was starting to get into it. Like, the first few months of uni, I think for everyone are really hard. You're like homesick, you're not used to doing everything by yourself, you know, you're finding your feet in a new city, it's hard. So just as I'd like found my feet, it was like kind of ripped away, which was really, really upsetting. Like, there were points I thought I wouldn't go back. That was it, that was uni done. And then to go back and second year just be like this weird like tiptoeing around scenario, because, you know, there's 6 of us in the house. Mm-hmm. One girl is very anxious about it and everyone else isn't. So it's kind of like, trying to find the balance of how can we make you feel okay, but also not like make ourselves depressed and feel like shit, basically. Of
course. So for people listening and watching, what are you studying? What is your interest? Because this is what I find fascinating about what's happening now because of your study. So what is it that you are studying and what are your interests?
So I study social sciences with social work at the University of Bath. Mm-hmm. Bath is like, just a bit of background on Bath. Bath, I really, really wanted to go there because it's the best for what I do. It's a really good university. And interest-wise, I suppose anything. When I went to uni, I'd have probably said that my interests were things like the arts, obviously. I'm really creative. I love the arts. But since I've been at uni, I've developed like greater interest into policy and law, which I never thought I would say. I'm really interested in international law, social policy. I kind of went a bit off psychology when I went to uni.
Well, it's really interesting, though, in a strange way, that what is happening universally, globally at the moment, sort of incorporates all of those elements, you know, and maybe you moving into that side of things, maybe that is a reactionary thing about, you know, your feeling, how you're being, your generation, like I said on the intro there, you know, your generation is under so much pressure via your peers, from expectation for those who do participate in social media and online in many forms these days. Yeah. And then obviously with the political and health issues we're faced with, you know, your learning is strange because you're at home doing it. You're not bustling along a campus with lots of like-minded people who are all pushing one another to succeed and to learn more and to hear more, to grow more. You're kind of, like you say, in your house. You're in small pockets under pressure with high stress. Not everybody's on the same page, so it must be sort of your cogs in your brain must be flying.
Well, yeah, when I was driving here, I was thinking about what we're going to talk about, and I think the only way I can describe this situation is if I if you could open my brain right now and how it feels and like all the stuff that's going on in there, it would literally be like a party popper. It would just go and you wouldn't even be able to figure out what is going on in there because of the stress. Like it's a lot, and it's hard because of this whole, I think COVID's definitely divided. Like university is really nice because it's like a community, and you do like it's very inclusive. You kind of go there, like coming from Lincoln, I only really knew, I suppose, like, to put it bluntly, I only had like white friends. I didn't know any friends that went English. I was friends with pretty much like boys, and then I went to uni, and that like flipped completely. And yeah, my friendship group is so much more diverse. So it does unify your university. You learn more about different types of people, where people are from. Like class was a huge thing, I noticed when I went to uni. You can really see class.
And do you think that's universal across all universities, or do you think it's in the more affluent areas, in the more affluent universities themselves?
Yeah, like if I think about my uni, and Millie's, like my best friend, she's at Leeds, which is a really good uni, but Bath is, I was the only person on my corridor with one other girl that wasn't from private school.
Right.
And when I say private school, I mean like girl I live with, she went to like a school in Winchester, which is like the fifth something, I'm not sure if it is fifth, but it's like one of the
high
top
ranking.
Yeah, most expensive, like a great school. So, and then obviously like my best friend went to a really good school in London. So yeah, that was weird.
Did you find that to be intimidating?
Yeah.
Or just different? Or no, it was intimidating?
Yeah, I remember texting my mum on the first day, and I was like, because my mum was like, oh, how is it? And I was like, Mum, I have nothing in common with these people. Like they are so different to me. I remember making a bacon sandwich in Freshers Week for all the girls in my corridor, because that's just like, I was like, oh, how can I make them like be my friend?
That's lovely, by the way.
And then these girls were just like, why did you do that? Like, I'd never give my bacon to someone else. And that like really upset me. I was like, oh no, like I'm never going to make friends. But obviously I did. Like,
yeah, of course.
fine,
And you always do. You persevere, and things always find a way. But that must have been a shell shock.
Yeah, definitely. It was such a culture shock going to uni. I felt so out of place for like the first month or two. Yeah, and that was what it was. Like, I'm not, my dad works really hard, so we had money, but my dad didn't want us to go to private school, and no matter how much like his business grew, my dad never changed as a person. He was always the same, like working class attitude. You work hard for what you've got, you be nice to people. That's just how it was. So to go into an environment where it was kind of like, it went from that, which I think is the majority, that is the attitude in Lincoln, isn't it? It's just you look after each other.
We're a hard-working, small city.
Yeah, and so to go somewhere and be just literally chucked in to this group of, there were mostly girls in my flat, the attitude was just completely different from people. Like the warmth wasn't there. So many people picked up on my accent, and I don't have a strong accent from being here. That's because obviously I went to like drama school and stuff. So I'm relatively well spoken for Lincoln. So to have that picked up on was really like, I like laughed it off, found it funny, but there was a part of me like it just made me feel different. I just felt weird. Just to
interject quickly, so now, like you say, into second year, do you feel like those kinds of behavioural traits have faded in because they might be sort of tools that we use when we're all strangers to one another and we kind of revert to our types, and then over time when we get to know people we let those barriers down and therefore those judgments subside a little bit? Or do you think is that still prevalent? Is there cliques and people form friendships based on those early assumptions?
Yeah, there are some like groups of girls from where I lived, like my accommodation, that yes, that's very much like, I think there's one group of girls and they call themselves the sorority house.
Oh.
And they're very like, they think, well, They are very elite. You can't be friends with them.
Okay.
I'm not friends with them. I don't really want to be. But I suppose I'm in a bubble. Me and my friends always say this. Like, we are such good friends in our house. Like, we're like a family. We have dinner together every night. Like, on a Sunday, usually I cook because they're not very good. So I cook. Like, we had a tapas night in the night. Like, so we're in a bubble. So I guess I don't really notice that anymore as much, apart from on the phone when I like go on the social media and I see what they're doing, and I see like these little pages pop up or that certain people have made for their friendship group, and I guess it does change in second year. Like you kind of find your group and then you stick with them, and then I suppose you are in a bubble. You just see what's going on in that group, and that's, for me anyway, that's my experience. So when you were at university and this initial lockdown happened, which was that March, April? I think it was March the 14th that I got sent home.
Right.
I think it was then or the 15th, but it was around there. So
what was the attitude at that point? Whereas everybody kind of thinking, oh, nice one, we're going to have a time off, we're going to chill.
Well, funnily enough, so we got, like, it was starting to say, like, oh, there's going to be a lockdown, like, this was circulating in the news, and then we got an email from the uni, like, we're closing. And that night, I shit you not, the nightclub that I went to, I'd never, ever, ever seen anywhere that full in my life. Like, absolutely everyone was out, and it was probably the best night I had at uni. But yeah, so it was kind of like no one really cared. Everyone was like, right, we need our last night out, and we all need to go together. And like people I hadn't spoken to, you know, we were all like having pre-drinks in the social area, which we hadn't done for ages after we'd like found our friendship groups. And yeah, we all went out and we didn't get home till like 5, 6.
Okay. So when you do get home, obviously I think probably by and large lots of people kind of enjoyed time generally, as well as they were confused and, you know, wondering what's happening. I think novelty is very strong, and we kind of say, okay, you know, we'll enjoy a couple of weeks at home and then it'll be back to normal.
It wasn't really like that. I think everyone was really upset. Like when we had to go home, it was like I cried a lot because I didn't want to go home. I was like, oh, I don't want this to.
You just kind of setting in as well, getting comfortable. So you've gone through those initial adjustments to then start feeling like
I was having the time of my life.
Yeah.
And then literally it felt like someone just like pressed a button and was like, no, stop.
So how was your work ethic been during this time? Have you managed to stay motivated? Have you still been hitting all of your core stuff? Have you even had expectations to do work, or, you know, and how has it felt? I've read, I don't know directly, hence I'm asking you, but I've read of students and a lot of learning being done via, you know, kind of unprepared Zoom calls and unprepared FaceTime calls, or better still, Zoom calls that are happening and, like, you know, a lecturer's partner comes through the back kind of semi-naked or something, and everyone panics and oh god, and all sorts of strange.
To be honest, I think so. Like at first, like first year when we first went into lockdown, it was really, really, really hard. Like to stay motivated, and it just wasn't organised well enough because it was just a rush. So we got such a shit education that last term. I think there's lots of petitions to get money back. I was still expected to do every single assignment. I know my friends in first year at other unis weren't. They got let off, but I had to do all of them, and then any exam that I was supposed to have got changed to an assignment that had to be done within like X amount of days. So that was really
the standard
hard.
The standard of teaching, learning, obviously the reciprocal nature of your learning, that kind of dwindled, but the expectation
was higher
to deliver actually went up probably.
And I think like from people that I've spoke to, everyone would agree that it's been the same this year. Right. So like for my course, I've been fortunate in that there's only 20 of us, and I'm for social work you have to do like placement X amount of placement days, and so I do 4 placement days a week and then 1 day in uni, 9 till 5:30. I'm lucky in that my placement have allowed me to go in face to face, and so nothing's changed for me in that sense.
So you have got an actual physical
there's
experience.
And like, because it's in mental health, we don't wear masks, PPE, and we don't deliver personal care, so I wouldn't have to wear anyway. And yeah, the organisation I work for have actually been amazing in that they've considered the people that we work for and their mental health, and that is a priority. So yeah, like for people with autism, schizophrenia, if you're wearing a mask, that can be really scary.
God, yeah,
and that, like, I work with people that are autistic, and the anxiety that they get when we go into a shop seeing people, it's just enough for me to understand. Like I've had someone literally have to like hold my hand, like a grown man is like had to hold my hand because he's so scared of like, and if someone talks to him and he can't make eye contact with someone, but he can't see what they're saying because they've got a mask on.
And we are literally DNA tuned for thousands upon thousands of years of evolution to pattern recognition. We want to be able to empathise with the face. You know, we can see the movement of a face, the pattern, the structure, the contour of a face, which helps us to know where we are in that frequency, in that exchange of energy, and that's gone. And then everywhere you look, it's kind of like I don't know, it's like you walk. For me, I walk in the co-op and it's like walking into like the next level of a shoot 'em up game on a PS2. There's just people in mass, like, you know, and they're all sort of scattered about and everybody's looking at each other, and you just feel like I could go in there with my little, you know, my joypad and just be in a game.
Yeah,
it's strange. It's a very strange feeling.
Yeah, it is, and it's like hard enough for, I think, us to fathom that. So I can't even comprehend what it is like for someone
people with difficulties,
got, like, especially like schizophrenia. I actually didn't understand it until I worked in it. I had a preconception of what it was like, but the reality of schizophrenia is like so different to what you think it is.
Right.
And it's so scary because like 90% of the time someone's seeing something in the room and you have no idea what's going on in their head.
Okay.
And they're terrified, and like you cannot begin to imagine like what that's like, to constantly, like, I work with one person who has a type of schizophrenia that basically it affects her body. So she always thinks she's physically ill. So she'll like get the symptoms of a heart attack, but she's not having a heart attack medically, but she's got the symptoms of a heart attack. And it's so like bizarre. Because that is so fucking scary.
So she's like almost like
it's happening,
willing,
but medically it's not happening.
Yeah, so she's like willing it into existence, like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
Yeah, and like, it's just, I never ever knew. When you think schizophrenia, you think voices in your head, someone being like a crazy person.
Yeah, 1 minute they're
psycho,
nuts, next minute they're really cool.
Yeah, that's what you think. That is not schizophrenia at all. Like, some guy I work with, he's amazing, most intelligent person, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and I have some of the best conversations with him. I've learnt so much from him. But then when I read his file, I found that he basically had an episode and ran around the city naked.
Was he just out with the lads?
No, he'd
I'm sure I've done that.
Missed his medication, and that's all it was.
Oh, right, okay.
And he thought he was the devil.
That makes me feel better.
And he was telling everyone, like, I'm a bit slow. He was telling everyone that he was the devil, and it was like you can't imagine him doing it.
That's common when people say that they are the devil. That's interesting because I myself, as you know, friends of mine, you know, that have suffered, one of which that we lost earlier this year.
Yeah.
That I am the devil thing. Where does that come from? That's
it is really
commonplace.
Common. Yeah, it's really common.
Excuse me, I'm just going to.
Sorry about moving away from my mic.
That's all right. Just keep it with you. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, it's like this weird. So one of the biggest things, one of the most common things with schizophrenia is like a God complex. So it's like that thing of like you know, Kanye West, such a good example.
I think he's just been on Joe Rogan Experience. I've not seen it yet. I'm going to check it out. I've seen some comments and I want to make my own mind up. So
he has some sort of, from what I know, or from what I've seen, bipolar disorder, which isn't that different really. I think it is considered a variation of schizophrenia. I might be wrong though.
Okay,
but
well, Aidan can clarify that for us. I'm sure.
It's been like used in there's similar traits anyway, and he has a god complex. So he gets this idea in his head when he's having an episode, when he's having a manic episode.
Yeah.
He's publicly, like, I don't know if you saw recently, he did the rally and he was screaming about how he nearly forced his wife to have an abortion with his first child. And this is a rally where he's saying, like, I want to be president. And then afterwards, he goes off, gets on a plane, goes to Wyoming, goes on Twitter, makes all these tweets saying, my wife is trying to kill me. Have you ever seen the film Get Out?
Yes.
Yeah, he said that was written about me. He says, like, and then he was making tweets which, like, people found funny, like saying that, calling Chris Jenner, Chris Jong-un.
Oh, it's Chris Jenner.
Do you know Chris Jenner? Can we get a picture of Chris Jenner?
I don't know. Aidan might be able to do something, but Chris Jenner.
Kardashian's mum. She's the matriarch.
Oh, the mum. I'm confused. They've got two mums, haven't they?
Well, no, their stepdad's trans, just transitioned to a woman,
right.
But they still call him their stepdad, and they still call her.
It's very confusing. So she is his stepdad.
They still call her dad.
Yeah, we're living in a mad world.
So Chris is like, but he was calling Chris Jong-un, saying Kylie, which is Kim's little sister. He was like, Kylie, you stink, like, and he's just tweeting.
This is Kanye still, yeah.
Absolute, like, people are like, this is hilarious.
He wasn't hacked. This is
this is him, and because that's what happens when he has an episode. He thinks that he's this, like, god, that he believes that he is a prophet, and he has said that he was sent by God.
Devil's advocate a little bit here. The size of a pop star that he attained, the level of success he achieved, not just commercially with fan base universally around the world, but with his peers. He was almost at the. You're talking the one-off level, the Michael Jackson of a generation, or the Eminem, like that level of where they are above the best. He just seemed to have that. So I can understand, especially with the style of his music, which it's not boastful per se, but there's obviously an element of, celebration of climbing that ladder, which is obviously, and hats off. But yeah, that's a, and I only say this because I've read, being in music myself, reading biographies, reading about people's lives who've been big rock stars and stuff. They do seem to lose their way when they become omnipotent, which to be godlike, which they are godlike. Because if you think about it, I know we think about religion as them. But actual worship, actual energy being paid to you in a prayer, like, so powerfully. I mean, you've got to do well to keep hold of that on that level. So, I mean, the other thing I was going to say there is probably don't pick your phone up and fucking speak to 50 million, however many people he's got. This
is the thing, like, he posted the address of where he was. He was like, I'm at the ranch in Wyoming, Kim, come pick me up.
This is definitely him.
No, like, it was, Kim had to do, like, a statement because it's like the third or fourth time it's happened now. It happens periodically, like, and it's usually high stress with him. You can, it was probably triggered by the presidential, he's running. He wanted to run
I do know,
as president.
He is now,
So he was doing a rally, and that was obviously really high stress, really high anxiety. So then he has this rally and just switches on stage, and it was live. Everyone could see it. You have to watch it. It was bonkers. He was crying hysterically, like screaming about abortion, saying, he's against abortion. He's pro-life. So, and he was using this as like a reason for why he's pro-life. But then I think, like, pull away from that. It's like, even though Kim Kardashian is famous and he's famous, they are just like, they are husband and wife. They are real people.
Well, yeah.
And that sort of information, like, saying me and my wife considered aborting our child. That's so precious and personal that you wouldn't want the whole world to know that. Like, and that's what's quite hard, I think, is like people dehumanize celebrities, don't they? They just see them as a figure. They don't see them as a person. But yeah, so she ended up having to do a public. She said, and it was heartbreaking. She was like, you don't know what it's like living with a husband who has bipolar disorder. You don't know what it's like for my children. You don't know what it's like for my family. You see me as this famous person, but I am a person who's dealing with this.
This point, I'd like to pick up on, Georgia, and kind of extrapolate it to the Joe Blogs and the normal man, because I believe, and I've had a theory, I discuss this with Aidan sometimes, and it's something I knock around quite a lot. And I used to, before the age of social media, we were just chatting before the podcast about Generation X, Y, Z, Millennial and all that. I'm Generation Y, so I'm just before you. And I'm old enough and young enough to have lived in an analogue time where there was no, a phone was on a cord in the hallway of your house and it rang like a fire alarm, and you answered it and that was it.
Yeah.
Then
I remember that.
Oh, well. Maybe, yeah. Maybe you do. But
because I wasn't allowed a phone, was I?
These things have obviously changed so much. But what I'm getting at is, once upon a time, and I alluded there to reading biographies, I've always been fascinated with musicians and so on, and reading about whether it be the Beatles or pop stars of my time or whatever. I always remember thinking you would see the tabloids. Back then I used to read tabloids because that's what I knew. Whoever I lived with had tabloids, and then I went out into the world, into work, and the guys I worked with, everyone read papers, grabbed a paper in the morning, you read Red Tops, you read the Mail, you read all the shite, but you don't know it at the time. It's just, we're just buying the newspapers. And then you would get a profile in your mind of whoever it may be. Noel Gallagher, you think, oh yeah, Noel Gallagher, yeah, he's a dried mank who's got this quick wit and writes a mean song, and he wears this kind of style clothes, and he's this kind of a dude, and then fill in the blank, and you have these profiles of the popular people who are put on the telly or in the tabloids or in the magazines. You kind of build up especially if you like them.
Yeah. If
there's somebody that inspires you, like the reason I use Noel Gallagher, because you kind of want to know them. Yeah. So then you do pay attention to pretty much, probably more than just the tabloid. Maybe you're watching outcuts from the album or whatever it is, and you start building a picture in your mind, and you think you know who they are. But as you say, a 7-minute soundbite selling the new album on the whatever show, the TFI Friday or the whatever, as fun as that was, probably as loose as you would get. That's probably as close to a real kind of conversation you would get. Other than that, they're going around they're going around all of the mainstream and doing the soundbite to sell the thing. But now we live in times with these phones where, and like I say, I used to think about that and think, actually, you haven't got a clue. You don't know who this is. You just think you do.
Yeah.
Then I started to think about it more with these phones, because with social media, I've been back and forth with my family, my mum and my sister over the years, in the early years of this. As you said there, why would they put that out about an abortion? Why would you put that out to everybody? And this is such a deep conversation, this bit, because we had a situation in my family where one of my younger brothers, as you know, was diagnosed as having cancer at 15. And my mum and my sister were kind of on the social media saying, oh, can't believe it, and then all these people, obviously lovely people, saying, we're so sorry, and what can we do, and all these lovely things. I didn't know at the time. I was actually in town somewhere, and someone came up to me, I'm ever so sorry to hear about your brother. And I was like, what? Then check, and it's on there, and there's 200 people going, oh, sorry to hear, and it's like, whoa, hang on. And I remember thinking then, it kind of came to me about how I used to think about, we think we know, but we don't know. And then what does that actually do to our ability to genuinely have any kind of real perspective on it, other than, like the simplistic kind of reactionary things? Compassion, obviously. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. But what does that really mean? And these phones now have accelerated it to the point where I think we're at the point where we're looking not just at celebrities and, like you say, considering them as a figure of just, we're doing it not just to each other now. I think we're starting to see ourselves, people who are really active in social media. And now that avatar, that great picture, that filtered picture that you put up, the best one of you that you like, and then underneath that profile picture, all the best posts that represent you. Years and years and years into this now of us learning how to tailor ourselves to be the best version of ourselves, both aesthetically and now we're into the whole psychological side of it, where we don't want to be PC upsetting anybody. We want to be, we want to be, we don't want to be triggered. We want to be seen to be perfect people. And I think that issue now is absolutely critical for our time with your generation and generations after you, because this whole thing you talk of with Kanye and his wife, I think that's happening every day in the micro with all of us. We're obsessed with ourselves at the same time as kind of being disgusted with ourselves. Is that too strong, do you think? No,
I do think that's right. Like, I read this book called, I think it's called the joy of the ordinary. She wrote The Unexpected Joy of the Ordinary. That's what it's called. Okay. She also wrote a book called like The Unexpected Joy of Being Single. She's written a few. This author, and she talks about this in the book. It's like about how, like, for millennials, but background on her, why she wrote this book. She was a classic, high flying London, like, successful woman. She was doing all these amazing things, like unimaginable highs. Like, her whole life was just one constant high. But then when she was going to sleep at night, she couldn't sleep because if she didn't have something planned the next day, then she just felt like shit. She was like anxious. She couldn't like sit still and just be still. She just couldn't be still. And I've noticed that with myself massively in the past like 6 months. Yeah, just like there's always, I'm always doing something. And my best friend said to me recently, she was like, I've never ever seen you sit still and not be doing something. Whether that's like me not like even eating. Like if I'm eating, if I'm not eating, I'm sorting something out in my room that doesn't need to be sorted out. I'm just doing it for the sake of it. Or I'm
doing work,
researching something, doing
social
work.
Media.
I'm always doing something, and I think when I started to think about that, then I read this book and it was kind of explaining like there's this weird thing that happened to sort of people born after 2000, so me, where we've kind of just been on this constant, like, is it hedonic treadmill? So like it's just going on and on and on, and nothing is ever enough. Like, we are never happy. Yeah. So it's like I don't know, I'm trying to think about, so I got my A-levels, got into the uni that I liked. I was really happy that I got in there. But then straight away, I'm thinking, like, what can I do that's more than that? How can I be better than that? And I think there's an element where that's healthy. But then there's also this thing where it like becomes obsessive. And I've noticed that I'm definitely someone that gets really obsessive. Like, I have to be doing something that's not ordinary all the time. Like even for my friend's birthday, it had to be the best birthday. It had to be. And like my lockdown, I didn't stop. That time was such a good time to be still, and I wasn't still. And when I had to be, it made me anxious. I was depressed. I was like to my dad, I'm going to kill myself.
Do you think, Georgia, that this correlates with our complete and utter, I'm going to call it a fundamental change in our attention span? Because our attention span now is 140 characters and 1 minute.
Yeah.
I think YouTube videos, last time I looked, I think the optimal time for a YouTube video is like 7 minutes. And of that, an average watch time will be not even 50%. Obviously, Instagram has created this...
Reels.
It was a minute, wasn't it? You can upload a video for a minute. Then you had the stories, which chop that up into segments. Then... I think TikTok, which I'm not aware of. I think we're on it. Get yourselves over to TikTok, Julie Chat Podcast. I've never seen it, but Aidan assures me it's amazing.
TikTok might actually be getting shut down because it's owned by like some dodgy Chinese company or something.
Oh, well, that'll lead into a part of this conversation shortly, I'm sure. But like, do you not, I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure the science is being done and the research and the studies are going into that. And if there's not already published, we're not online on the screen tonight, but that deficit in our attention, and our expectation, for me, and I'm going to say it now, I honestly think this will probably sound far too out there for most people, but I'm sure some people I'm going to say this. I think the internet and the way we use it socially is the absolute root of the acceleration of where we are as a culture with the things that you're discussing, you know, from young people to older people to people in the middle like me. We aren't built to process this information, not on a physical kind of, like you say, for you young ladies, and the guys now. It's even with the guys now, the comparisons to be the best, fitter, healthier, browner, you know, to be in the better destinations, to have all of the things that you know, the cool things to have. That's one side of it, but just the amount of news, I honestly think we don't know who to trust now.
No, I definitely, that's something I
There's
struggle
no
with.
solid barometer for trust, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
With the news, whether it was the BBC or whatever, you know, once upon a time, there was, you could, even if it didn't sit quite right, it stopped somewhere. It stopped somewhere.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just like, well, this scientist proved that wrong, and they've debunked. It's just so.
Yeah, it's like this constant stream of like information, and there's like that basic psychological theory about memory where your brain can only process like 7 plus or minus 2 things at one time. So that's like so that's like 7 pieces of information, 5 to 9 pieces of information. But like when you're on your phone, I turn my news notifications off. God knows how many times I've said this to you before. I turn them off.
And the government turns them back on.
Someone keeps turning them back on. And I changed my phone password because I thought someone is pranking me here, but it keeps happening.
They want you to know the COVID rules.
But like, it's just, I was stood in the kitchen earlier and I'm making paella and my fucking phone pings. We might be going into another lockdown. Then I hear 500 people a day are predicted to be dying by next month. And it's like, I literally just boom, straight in my brain. And I'm trying to concentrate on how many pieces of chorizo I'm putting in my paella and how long has my onions been cooking. You know, that's what I want to concentrate on.
And on so many deeper levels, you're just trying to stay sane and not get gobbled up in this whole... I think we're in the eye of the storm, and I've said this term before, the 200 years dead thing that always stuck with me when I was younger, that John Lennon had said in an interview about how us as humans, it takes us, you know, it's an arbitrary number, but 200 years to just actually fucking get what was happening.
Yeah, well, civilizations have only... Aidan, is it 150 years for a civilization to rise and fall? Is that what you said?
250.
250,
it's like
yeah.
between 200 and 300.
Yeah.
It does feel like that, and I feel like right now we are in the
fall.
The epicenter of the transitional period. There's the Industrial Revolution, obviously, you know, rebuilt the world literally, and the digital revolution, the technological revolution is I think we can't even comprehend what's happening, and we are literally remapping our brains. We are so hyper aware of things that would never ever have even been on our radar in any way, shape or form. Whether that's, again, arbitrary silly stuff on Instagram, who's having this for their dinner and who did that, and that team over there won that. Like, we would just know what was in front of us, and I think our little processes are, you know, we cannot handle it, and we're all dealing with it in different ways. But it's affecting everything, and with what's going on now with COVID, I come back to the trust issue. Like, there is nothing, there is no kind of parental authoritative figure that we can actually just go, even if I don't like it, that's what it is. That is the truth. You know, science, I guess, is as close as we can get.
Yeah, even that's like funded by think tanks, and then there's a famous
industry.
There was a famous. There's a program called Miss America on BBC. It's really good, and it's about the sort of like feminist revolution in America, and this like strain of so the governments, like sort of in the Western world, started to fund these feminist think tanks for like female studies, and to basically they only funded a certain type of feminism, which was conservative feminism. So conservative feminism, there's a really, really famous, it'll come back to me, a really famous lady. She's written quite a few books, and she ran for candidate at like the to be the whatever their I don't know what the American equivalent to an MP is, but you know, in like that certain state,
like a senator kind of thing.
yeah, like a governor, whatever it's called. She ran for that in her state, and she was her whole thing was protect the housewife, protect the lady that cooks and cleans. But ironically, she had been to university twice. She had done, I think she's some sort of science, and then she ended up going and doing law against her husband's will, but she did it, and that was her whole image, and she got so much support from the government. They financed her, but that was because that fitted their agenda. So they were trying to put across, you know, like, oh, look at us, we're funding this feminist. But this woman was exactly what they wanted, which was just a woman that was telling other women that they should stay at home, they should work, they shouldn't work, they should just have kids, they should, you know, do all these traditional roles, which, you know, I'm of the belief that if that's what you genuinely want to do,
I was going to say, shouldn't you just be saying, if you want to do that, let's accommodate that, and because that's really important. And if you don't, you should have equal opportunity to go out there and try.
Yeah, and I'm definitely of that belief. I like, you know, my stepmom, I've spoken to her about this before, when she had my first sister, she said to my dad, even if we live in a council house and have no money, like we are literally running on the minimum, I'm staying at home, because that's what she wanted to do.
She wants to be a mum.
Her sister, completely different, like she wanted to work. My mum, completely different. Like I've seen it all, but so I don't have an issue with that, and I don't think people should be shamed for wanting to do that either. But it's definitely interesting to when you look at the think tanks that they fund and the agendas of the think tanks. I don't know how prevalent it is now, but I'd say it's probably about the same. Like, it's very, very interesting to see how these things actually fit.
Of course,
what they want and what they're, you know, that's the information that gets published. It's not the information that comes from like the lesbian feminist or the feminist that preaches about like, you know, the prevalence of like sexual assault, or
it has to fit. It has to fit the paradigm. It has to fit the overarching narrative, which the overarching narratives, unfortunately or fortunately, you know, are put in place by the established structures. You know, and in academia, for instance, it's, you know, the lines were drawn in the sand in the 50s, was it? You know, so those structures have got momentum. They've got hierarchies. They've got lineage, and you know, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Mark. Was it Mark Twain? I always remember reading power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it seems like every time we find ourselves in positions of privilege, you know, we protect it, obviously, because we don't want to lose the privilege. Yeah. And then people have friends, you know, and where you've got friends, you exploit one another for what we can help each other with. You know, you need that doing, I can do that for you. Well, you can do that for me, and that's great. Yeah. But when we're at that higher echelon of society and decision making, and you know, the infrastructures of education or politics, that's where it becomes really, really dangerous. Because that momentum is so solid. It's so difficult to penetrate it from the outside and try and get to what's actually happening. And it's not happening across the board. It's happening in pockets that kind of connect, you know. And so that overarching narrative will always suit itself.
That quote is Lord Acton.
Lord Acton. Okay, thank you. Because I've been banging on about Mark Twain for it. Give me a good Mark Twain one, Aidan.
I'll get you on.
Also, Aidan, whilst you're there, please can you Google... actually, I'll Google it. I'll Google it. I know you've been there the whole time. I just mean whilst you're Googling stuff.
You are the first millennial in the studio, and you are on your phone.
I'm Googling the name of this lady because it's annoying me.
No, you should. I mean, we came in here late tonight. For everybody at home, we're drinking. It's late, and we didn't get the screen up and running.
Something Friedan.
No, that's Betty Friedan, the other one. Oh. Betty Friedan isn't in Miss America. Well, she is, but not really. That's
confusing.
There's Gloria Steinem. It's not Gloria Steinem. Just Google the right wing.
It is better to keep your mouth closed and let people think you are a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Mark Twain.
Oh,
I thought you were saying that to me then. I was like, sorry. A bit rude.
I should live by that, actually. In fact, yeah.
Well, yeah, if you just Google the right-wing feminist in Miss America, it'll probably come up. I'm trying to Google it, but it's not working.
Phyllis
Schlafly. That's her name.
Right.
The right wing. She was very. Well, that was sort of the first wave though of feminism. So,
Right.
like Bessie Friedan's.
So would you class
era.
yourself as a feminist, or are you
Yeah,
a student
I
of
think-
feminism, or are you
No,
actively living that? Are you making decisions based upon it outrightly, or are principles that you just...
Yeah, to be honest, I would definitely say that I probably do identify as feminist.
Yeah.
I think everybody should, based on the true definition.
When you say
the
that...
true definition, not the. I think people have a misconception of feminism, which is like
there's many
'cause it
fractions of it though now,
saturated
isn't there? Because
in the media, it's become saturated.
well, again, and I'm not going to stick my neck out too far, but I have read accounts of, when there's been feminist marches where there's been different factions of feminists within the march falling out with each other because
Yeah.
you're not the right kind of feminist.
Yeah.
So it has become, again, thanks to this little Black Mirror, it's become another kind of situation that's...
Definitely. Yeah, there's like this huge I think anyone that is
So
truly-
define this for us.
do you want me to get the definition of...
Yeah, I want your
my
definition for you
of
to define
feminism,
it. Yeah.
It would be about equality of opportunity for the sexes.
Opportunity, that's an interesting word, opportunity.
Yeah, I know about equality of opportunity and equality of outcome.
Yes.
I think equality of outcome is difficult. I know a lot of girls actually on my page that will be like, how can you say that? They won't even agree with me on this, but and I'm probably one of the...
But that's fine.
No, I know that's fine. I know that's fine because I'm being true to myself, so that is fine. But there are a lot of people that will not think that's fine, and that's there's a really famous feminist called Florence Given that I love. I gave Sophie her book actually because
Okay.
it's all about sort of
Sophie Hahn's previous guest on the podcast, we
Yeah.
talked a lot about Kelly Brogan, and we talked
Yeah.
about okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like things she's experiencing now, very relevant to her and where she is in her life. And she's young, Florence Given. She's an artist, and she...
Oh, you sent me some of her stuff.
I
didn't you?
love... Yeah, she's probably like... She's iconic. She's very iconic. But yeah, she talks in her book about this thing in feminism with body hair. So it's like, you're not a feminist if you don't have hairy armpits. And it's like, well, actually, she doesn't think that. She's saying that's what people say.
Right. So
That's what feminists say to other feminists. They're like, well, you're not a feminist because you have a shaven body. But actually, life is easier for women when they have a shaven body. So why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't we do that? Well, that doesn't make you any less of a feminist because you shave your legs, because actually your life is easier when you shave your legs anyway. In so many aspects, life gets easier for you. And not only that, everyone's doing it. So why would you not when people are going to make comments about it? You should be allowed to do that without being dragged down by other women. And because that's the thing in women, it's other women that are often a big...
I've said that on this podcast. What were you going to say then, Aidan?
I was just going to say maybe also some people just like it as well.
No, that's what I said.
Like what? Just shaving the legs?
Just
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying.
I was going to point out there, I've said it on this podcast before that,
it's not as clean cut as like one thing. I understand that.
behaviours that are kind of outside of beliefs, like they're not driven by beliefs. Like to shave your legs is not necessarily some moral kind of dialogue you have to have with yourself. It's like a choice to be often it will be a perception of cleanliness. It'll be a perception of hygiene. Or
see, it's interesting that you say that, because do you know why women shave? Do you know when it started?
When it started?
Do you know why we shave? Do you know why women shave?
Because of Playboy magazine.
No, because during the war, the Gillette, I think it was Gillette, a big razor brand, couldn't sell razors because men were away. So they couldn't sell as many. So they started advertising it towards women.
Is this Edward Bernays at it again, is it?
Huh?
Edward Bernays behind that.
I don't know, maybe.
He was, yeah. It'd be interesting to find out.
So it became...
So a marketing ploy, an advertising ploy to keep the sales going.
And it was marketed
as simple
towards
as
women as being you would basically be more sexy if you had a shaven body.
Okay, pause there. Is that true?
Well, you only know once you I don't know. I don't even know what's
As
true.
we sit here today, would you say, by and large, people would find it attractive for females to be?
It's hard to say it now because
our expectation
done it for so long.
is so rigid.
It's like ingrained in us. Like I remember being 14 and my mum teaching me how to imac my legs. But I also remember, ironically, Helen getting very cross with me for shaving my bikini line. Right. She didn't like that. She was like, "Why are you doing that?" But I had seen that on my mum. Right. So I did that because I'd seen it on my mum. I wasn't doing it for boys. I didn't.
You just thought that's what you do.
I had no interest in boys. Like I didn't have my first boyfriend until I was like 16. You know, and I'd not even like kissed boys before him. It was just I was very, very like. Yeah, it wasn't for boys. I had just seen it on my mum, but then, and I remember my mum would make comments about women when we were on holiday about like, oh, look at her, like she's not like shaved her bikini line, or that's disgusting. Like, how can her husband?
So you've got this associated kind of like a hygiene or a vanity or all of those things rolled into one. Yeah, that the culture. Yeah, it's interesting.
So.
Go on, Aidan.
So I got some statistics if you want to.
Okay, go on then.
So there's research that 75% people do it for comfort during oral sex. 39% of men choosing that reason. 67% of women said they do it because they feel more feminine. 63% said they like to feel soft. 62% said their partner liked it.
Okay. And I wonder how many of those people would tick all those boxes or several of them, do you know? Yeah. The feeling more... I understand... I mean, I say understand. From a male's point of view, I could understand why a female would want to remove hair to not feel so manly because men are hairy. That makes sense on a psychological level. Yeah,
I think it's just interesting that, like, if that had never have happened, would we do it?
Yeah.
And there are so many cultures in the world where they still don't.
But we have, given the tools, though, we have chosen to do it by and large, haven't we? So we have chosen to do it. Like, you know, we got the tools, and we, as you say, those statistics clearly say, you know, the majority of us are choosing that and preferring that.
Yeah, the reason that it's like so big in porn as well, because that exacerbates it. Like, because obviously there was like the 70s, like the porn bush and all that.
Well, that's why I said Playboy initially, because I know that when that happened, you know, all of a sudden everything starts to change. Yeah,
well, like porn worsened it, and the real reason that they started doing it in porn was to actually get like a better view of the sex.
Yeah.
So of the penis and the vagina.
Of course.
It made the view better. That was all it was.
You don't want it to look like you're getting a dead hedgehog off the road, do you?
Well, for so long, like it had been, you know, the 70s bush was like, wow, that's the sexy thing. And then it changed because people started to realise actually we can clearly see it now. So it switched again, and it's crazy. It's crazy how influential culture is on us and on our, like, how seeing something on a screen again and again and again, and especially because when you like watch porn, it's for sexual gratification.
So we're back here, aren't we? We're back here.
You watch it, you get sexual gratification from it, then you associate that with sexy.
Yeah,
and that's
you
the
want to be
psychology of it.
sexy.
And you want to be sexy. Men want you to be sexy.
And it's not even that you want to be sexy. You just want to be accepted. You want to be adored. You want to feel all the things that you think everybody else is feeling. That's really interesting. And I'd just like to point out, spirit father of the show, one of Terence McKenna, famous quote that I've got on a T-shirt, and he's actually on this bookshelf that you can see here. He's on the back of this bookshelf with Uncle Alan. Culture is not your friend.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought about that long and hard. I thought, fucking hell, that's a bit of a statement. And it's not to say, you know, culture isn't your friend in the ways that you need it to be a friend, but the overarching narrative of culture tends to just push us towards in this day and age at least, the homogenized, streamlined mainframe of capacity to think and be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that it's weird when you see. I think the best example of the way, that sort of like homogenized type, like, now with all these different campaigns on social media about like God knows what, I don't know what it is today. I saw one girl shared something, for example, because obviously like vegan. Let's take veganism. We'll take that as an example.
Fucking batten down the hatches, lock the door.
Vegans. This girl I know, she shares a lot of stuff, and there's been a few times where I was really good friends with her when I was younger. She's lovely, but she's one of them people that will like share a picture of herself. She's like, oh, these are like my roles, like, this is how a real body looks, but it's so filtered, so edited. Right. She looks fucking beautiful.
So she's making the fat look cool.
No, like it's not genuine. I know it's not genuine. I know.
I've come to the conclusion that any of us that are sharing too many pictures of ourselves, it's not genuine.
Well, so she shares a lot of stuff about like current affairs, and she shared something yesterday about that, like the EU have just they've just altered a regulation which basically means that any alternative milk isn't allowed to be compared to cow's milk on the packaging. So they're not, like, say for example oats milk, they're like, oh, this is 70%, I don't know if it's 70%, but like, for example, 70% more environmentally friendly and sustainable than cow's milk, as well as having like less hormones, blah 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 blah, that sort of thing. That's illegal under EU law now. So she shared it and she was like, this is awful, this is happening in the UK. And I actually I messaged her and I was like, I think you need to remember that we're leaving the EU on December 31st. So that might not even be implemented in the UK, because it doesn't actually say there when it's going to get implemented. Like, laws don't just get implemented overnight like that.
Unless they're COVID laws.
Yeah, unless they're under the little cheeky bypass.
Well, it's emergency. It's emergency.
Yeah, but laws like that, like, they don't just happen overnight. There's usually like a cut-off, because obviously there'll be X amount of oat milk farmers that will have X amount of stock that has this packaging on still, that they need to shift, of course, things like that. So there will be a time on it. So they have time to liaise with businesses. Yeah,
and they have to send out memos, and people have to understand to adapt their behaviours and the whole.
Exactly. Yeah. So it doesn't just happen. I said that to her. I was like, we are leaving the EU. Like, you can't share stuff like this because you haven't looked into it enough to know if this is happening in the UK. And then she was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm really sorry. And it's not the first time I've noticed that she's like shared. I mean, I think I've probably done it before. Like, I've shared something and I've not actually thought about it before I've shared it.
We've all made all the mistakes
we all do it, yeah. Well, but she does it quite a lot, and then it's kind of like, it's just not genuine. So
the issue we're talking about is
she likes to make herself this like amazing, attractive, all giving, like all loving person.
Right.
But she's actually really like
so that you've summed it up there. On whatever level we enter the game, yeah. Whether you're an intellectual who's flouting how intellectual you are by dropping knowledge or whatever it is, if you've got to come out of your everyday life to drop into your Black Mirror and boost your profile, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, here I am there, here's me again, there's something happening where you require that affirmation. You require some kind of, although you might be selling yourself as super confident and all these things and it's all going great for me, if it really was, and if it really is, it doesn't matter what your level of your Kanye or of your, Hannah from down the corridor, whose dad's got this is what I'm saying about these phones. So whatever angle we come at now, whether we talk politics, whether we talk COVID, we are the culture narrative you spoke of there, when Terence McKenna said that, we were living in a time of, I think that was in the 80s, we were living in a time of computers just starting to find their ways into, you know, offices and not even homes so much, but like, you know, really starting to shape the professional culture. And I don't know what he'd think today, you know, sat here now, because we are, that is a black mirror, because when you're looking in that mirror, you think you're seeing yourself, you're not. And not only that, you're being inundated with so much to process, so much to try and dissect. And because of the very nature of what we are, we're fallible, we are sensitive creatures that we seek communion, don't we? We seek
it's acceptance.
Support.
It's like you want acceptance. Everyone wants to be accepted.
We've put steroids onto it, and we've put fucking rocket launchers onto it, and lasers, and fucking we've just streamlined it straight into the middle of your chest, and it's like, whoa. And so we try and play the game, but we get caught in the game, and then the game's it's literally swallowing us up. It's swallowing us up. We shouldn't. If you know, fuck COVID. If the pandemic was fuck, the internet's gone off. It only seems to work for businesses and people who've actually achieved stuff, like, you know, writers and musicians and you know, documentary makers. It doesn't seem to work for the rest of us who want to just fucking shout at each other who's right, who's wrong, and look at me on the beach in Miami. Like, if that happened, that would be fucking really, really good for us, because guess what? You'd have to be in the world. You'd have to be present in the world and deal with who's in front of you and talk to your neighbour and get to know the shopkeeper again, and fucking just menial little things we can't even comprehend now because we're that far in.
Yeah, well, something like me and Millie, like, I've been best friends with Millie for forever.
A long time.
Yeah. Me and Millie actually have so few pictures together. And we always talk about this, and we were saying, like, because we see each other so rarely now, so rare, like probably 3-4 times a year. We're both at other sides of the country, like uni, but she's got a boyfriend, busy. We are so absorbed in spending time together and doing something, and we really enjoy each other's company, that we don't have time to like take a picture.
Well, you're not
like we don't feel that urge to.
Yeah, you haven't got that desire to. Yeah, like, because you're just in the moment.
We know that we're really good friends. We don't have to show anyone that we're really good friends. And then it's the same with like Alicia. When we went to Stockholm, I took pictures obviously of like the main things, but I took so few pictures compared to like when I went to Denmark on my own.
It's one thing taking pictures, Georgia.
No, but it's the time on your phone. Like there's this urge to take a picture, to share it with.
Yeah, but I think that's fine. This is what I was getting at. Once upon a time, we went out and purposely bought machinery to do that. Right? We don't do that anymore. I'm interested in the psychology behind this, right? So,
well, that's
if we had a trip planned, in 1997, you went down Snappy Snaps and you got fucking 3 Kodaks. Your mother, I remember doing this with your mother, she would buy cameras, and you would take cameras and you would take photos, and then you would have to remember to fucking bring the camera home with you. Then you'd remember a week later, oh shit, I need to get those films developed. I need to go to the place and speak to the man behind a till, give him the cameras. He'll ring me in. Back then, you know, tomorrow or 1 hour if you pay a bit more, whatever it was. Then you would get them back, and someone had processed them and they'd been through people's hands. Then you would get them, and then you'd look through them, and then you would put them in a frame, or some would go in a book, or they'd go. Like, that whole thing has gone. The actual intention of taking the photo while you're at the gig or while you're on the holiday or on that weekend away, that's the same, except the intention now is not to look at the pictures fucking 6 months later when you get home and we'll put these in an album and we'll treasure them. It's to like, I'm here now. Look where we are. Look what we're doing. Look where we are. Look what we're doing. Look who I'm with. Look what I'm doing. Which is taking us out of the moment. The action's the same. We still want to capture it, but the intent has changed. The whole kind of concertina of our mental placement with it thereafter, because
I think that's like the point that I was trying to make was that there's this, like, for us, that's how we know we've had a good time.
yes, totally.
It's because
That's what I picked up
we
on,
don't
yeah.
feel like we have to be on our phone taking a picture because we are having a good time.
Yes,
like
important.
taking a picture it has lost value for us. So, like, I have a Polaroid and Alicia has a Polaroid, and we, like, taken so few pictures on it because I save it for special moments. But that is how, in this generation, you know you've had a good time if you've got barely any photos, because you haven't used your phone to take a picture because you've actually been enjoying yourself to the point where you don't want to get your phone out and take a picture. Like, that is how so many times I've heard my friends, and I have definitely said at some point, that will be really good for, like, the Instagram. Like, that is the language that we use.
Of course, yeah, IG.
Like, yeah,
Let's
oh
IG
my God,
this.
that's going to be so good. And, like,
Are you storing this? Are you storing this? Somebody story this.
Well, we don't do that. We're not that extra.
Well, people are though, aren't they?
Yeah, we're not that extra, but, like,
Extra? What language is that? Jesus.
I'm
no.
extra. I got told that today.
Did
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, he is quite extra. He looks quite extra today.
Okay. What's going on?
Yeah, and like I've definitely, even recently, I think Alicia was like, "Oh, what are you wearing to this?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she was like, "Oh, well, if it's good, we need to get some pics for the gram." And it's like, but why?
Right, stop there.
But why?
Stop there, right? So, like I just said, right, that whole thing about Kodak and blah, 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 it's not just the action of the fact, oh, so let's take a photo, get a photo of this. Oh, can you take a photo of us, please, sir? Oh, yeah, there you go. Preempting it now, yeah?
Yeah.
This will be great for the gram. Like that. Think of that language.
Yeah, like
that
preempting life for someone else.
So it's not, we're not here in this moment. Like, as I'm thinking this out, as I'm here present or not in this moment, I'm already trying to sell this moment, not because I want Jenny and Sally to think it's great. I want them to think of me in a certain way. It's not like, oh, look at the thing in the picture.
Yeah.
It's no, look at
And
me experiencing the thing in the picture.
And you just do it. Like, it's just so you don't even think it. You just say it. It's like pre-programmed.
This is what's so damaging.
And it's like it's so weird. I never really I think I was very lucky that I hated it at the time, but then my mum and dad didn't let me have a phone.
Totally.
Before how old was I when I got a smartphone? Probably 17.
Totally.
I wasn't younger than 16.
Late on.
Yeah, like I was very, and the difference between me and my sisters is huge. Like, we went on Evie's phone and saw the amount of screen time she spent. I think mine averages between 3 and 5 hours, depending on the day. If I'm hungover, then it goes up to 6.
I'm interested here, actually. You might be able to help me, and Aidan, you might. Does that include, like, stuff like when you've got Spotify playing and
Yes,
stuff, and
it
podcasts? Because I'm always looking and thinking, what the fuck? I haven't had my phone in my hand that long.
Yes, so I used to think that. I used to think, like, when I noticed when I was driving back from, like, Bath to Lincoln, it'd be like, you've been on it for 10 hours. I was like, I've been driving.
So you've just
for
had
4 hours.
Have you, like, what, sat nav and,
it was
like,
my maps, yeah. So, and then, like, music playing, but it tells you. I'll show you. It tells you, like, it breaks it down for you. So it's
you
like,
can't keep that fucking thing out your hand, can you?
no, look, like 40 minutes today is what I've spent on it. Social, networking and other.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
When did you start that? About 45 minutes ago.
No, that's from the 24 hours. So
That's
That's
amazing.
all I've been on my phone today.
I don't even know what mine
been on
is.
it, but I've been actively. I won't spend more than 3 hours a day on it at the moment.
Well, that's really good.
Actively doing that.
And I often think lately that for all this legislation and all this mandated, let's call it, stuff coming through government and coming through the cabinet and the shadow cabinet and God knows who pulls strings, we should be concentrating on this epidemic. As you know, small children in the family, and we are.
Yeah, mental health. It's the biggest epidemic.
I can
think,
categorically say to this camera now, right, the fucking scariest thing for any parent or any young person or any grown up for this, but certainly for a parent, is these phones, technology, tablets, iPads for children. It is absolutely fucking frightening because we don't know the fucking near depth of it. We just talked there about, I've only been on this long, so that's okay. Oh, he's only been doing a maths game. He's only been doing that. Is there's so much happening in the way of addiction, into the way of reliability, into the way of expectation in these young minds, as you probably well know, studying what you study.
Yeah.
7 years old. My oldest son, who is 6 years old, came back out of school this week saying, oh, my friend has got a phone and my other friend's got a phone, and when will I get a phone? And it's like, fucking hell. He's 6.
Yeah.
6.
I know, I told my
and you
friends about that.
You want to put that in his hand.
Yeah.
The access to... We've got somebody coming on the podcast. I'll take a moment to plug this, Georgia, if you don't mind. We're on the nail on the head here. Ron Swanson, who's been a guest on the Sean Atwood podcast, and I happened to catch his podcast, which was all about this. He's like an online... I guess, investigator, and he's made movies about the evolution of technology and paedophilia and child predation on the internet, and how it's changing in ways. I mean, most people, you say, well, when I say paedophile, what is the profile that you get?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what yours is and what mine is.
Okay,
to see how we're different generationally. What's yours? You go first, and then I'll go with mine. Okay,
mine is a kind of...
Is it gone off?
Mine is a kind of my go-to off the bat is like an insincere kind of looking, shady, almost guilt-ridden. There's a I don't want to say an old guy, but just an oddball, man. Just an odd ball. Just not something unassuming, but not right,
It's so interesting. I always think this is interesting. Mine would be someone that's probably my age, maybe a little bit older, that speaks to girls that are probably, because I've had this with my sister's friends. So say Evie. Evie's 14. Her friend's 14. My friends are 20 to 22. That's what I would say that is. Speaking to them on Snapchat and getting pictures from them.
I think there's a term.
That's what I would call a paedophile.
That's interesting.
That's the paedophiles that I know.
Right.
That's how it's changed. It's because it's not seen as like... It's not actually seen as that socially unacceptable for an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old to be... But it's illegal.
It's really interesting you say that, because Ron Swanson, who I mentioned there, who's coming on the podcast soon, I'm really looking forward to it, because this is, anyone who knows the podcast knows it's born out of my fascination with childhood, with the trajectory that gets set and everything thereafter that happens. And in 2020, these things, as I just said, these things in kids' hands, tablets and these fucking, you may as well be giving them, you're giving them an addiction, and you're giving them a mental health issue that is going to be decades to try and, if you're lucky, even get near repairing. But Ron is a specialist in this, and we've been chatting, and he's agreed to come on. But what I heard him talk about in one podcast was exactly this: how there's so many profiles for the paedophile as a blanket term. Yeah. But there's a movement. Is it the MAP movement? If you can find this, Aidan, you might be able to find out what that acronym is. It's the MAP movement. I think I've
heard of that. I don't know what it stands for, but I've heard of it at work. It's
kind of a rebranding of what you just said. It's kind of like younger paedophiles, sex predators, whatever you want to call them, kind of making it more culturally kind of normal and acceptable, and rebranding it essentially like an advertising job. Yeah.
Well, like, I've like me and my sister's friends, I've heard them say like, so and so. Like one of their friends, like say for example, this is like their friend's name is Ellie. My sister don't have any friends called Ellie, but
random
so the
name.
Friends Ellie, and then they're like, they're talking to they've been sleeping with and like Josh, and then I'm like, but Josh is in my year. Josh was in my year at school, and they're like, yeah. I'm like, so that means he's like 21, and they're like, yeah, well it's not that bad. Like he's only like 4 or 5 years older than her. It's like that. Illegal? That is illegal. And me and Molly have had so many arguments over the dinner table about the fact she thinks that at 16 you can have sex with anyone. That's not the law. The law is that at 16 you can consent, but it is actually illegal for someone over the age of 18 to sleep with someone under the age of 18.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it really?
It's illegal, yeah. Like, it's a bit of a grey area. So the way that we usually in social work, it's usually seen as like an issue if like a 16-year-old is sleeping with a 21-year-old or someone over the age of 21. But it is actually technically, it's kind of like one of them laws where it's a bit slippy. It's not really it's a bit of a, no one really understands whether 16-year-olds can sleep with people over 18, because obviously if an 18 and 17-year-old sleep together, like mentally they're not that different at 17 and 18. But if I think about me at 16 and me at 18, I changed so much. Think about me at 18 and me at 20 now. I'm so different. Like I even 19 to 20, like from sort of 15 to 20, every single year, my change has been like on steroids. It's been like so fast, sonic speed. Like I've just, but next year my brain will be fully matured. So it makes sense that that's how fast I am changing at this point, because I'm accelerating to maturity, to having an adult brain. So but it is interesting. It's so strange, like to hear, because I think I find it hard to understand, because I remember older boys like approaching me at school, but I just thought it was weird.
What I wanted to go back to there was, so once upon a time, the age differences we're kind of knocking around here that feel kind of uncomfortable maybe, they were quite normal.
Yeah.
Once upon a time. If you go back to like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, it'd be quite normal for a 17-year-old girl to marry a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
You know?
I know.
What you know, again, the culture is shaping, you know.
I think that's why like 16 to 18 is such a grey area, because it's so hard to like, it's hard because at 16, you know, you feel like you can 100% make your own decisions and your decision is the correct decision. You do feel like that at 16. Like,
it's only till you get to 18 where you realise, oh, fucking hell, I made a couple of mad decisions.
When I think I started to like realise my parents were probably right when I was like 19. Yeah, I started to think, okay, maybe they were right about stuff.
Yeah, but you did well, like you say, you not having the phone for so long, not being, you know, caught up with boys in a way that can become difficult too soon.
Yeah, I'm so glad like I never sent naked pictures, because like so many girls I know got their naked pictures leaked, and that was just like, oh,
that's another thing that we're going to get deep into with Ron, you know. And I watched a documentary, and people might have seen it themselves. We watched The Social Dilemma, and then I watched Childhood 2.0. I sent you that. Did you watch that yet? No,
because I'm busy gal. I got stuff to do.
So here you go then. So the culture for young boys, this was America namely where I'm talking about now, where this particular incident and scenario happened, which was, so you've got the cool boys in the year, the lads who are obviously hooking up with the girls, and this is all same age stuff. This is nothing creepy in the way of anything, you know. You might get years.
Yeah, it is same age.
I'm just talking back to the phone and kind of the on the surface issues here. So girls sending pictures to boys, and then the alpha boy gathering up all the pictures and making Dropbox files and selling the access to the file. So then there's 15, 20 girls from their year in their school or whatever with all their pictures in it, and then selling the link or even giving away the link, and then boys accessing the link and having all these pictures of all these girls that have been sent, you know. It's pretty fucking mad, that.
Yeah, I know. I was really good friends with a girl at school who actually, weirdly, had a much older boyfriend, and a similar thing happened to her, and it was awful. Like, it was, I remember getting taken to the, I must have been year 10, I must have been about year 10 at the time, and I got taken into the, like, head of year's office, and he had made, like, a Google document of it. Like, I didn't know what that was at the time, but he made a Google document of all her pictures and a tape that he had made of her. And because she was like 14/15, in these pictures, it was actually a paedophilia charge because he was over 18. And I got like interrogated. They were like, do you know this boy? Like, do you know about these pictures? And I knew everything. And I remember at the time thinking it was really weird that she was having sex with like an 18, I can't remember if it was 18 or 19, but I just thought it was really weird. And I thought it was even weirder that her mum was okay with it. Because her mum, and I remember telling my mum, and my mum like really liked this girl, but my mum like eventually spoke to her and like her mum. And it was all, I don't really know what the outcome of it was, but it was horrible. Like, it was so heartbreaking for her, because for the rest of school, she was just a slag. That's what everyone called her. And so many people slept with her, took advantage of her. She ended up having like 4 abortions from like 4, and she was so damaged from it. Like, I'm not friends with her anymore. But yeah, like it was horrible to watch someone go through that. And then I was ironically on the other end of it, where boys were like, you're frigid,
bullying you,
you're frigid.
Well, that's the best place to be.
I remember going to a boy's house when I was like 15, and it was the first boy's house I'd ever been to. I lied to my parents. I was like, I'm going to my friends.
Sorry, Nath.
Went and got on the bus to the Ermine to this boy's house, and this is so messed up. I came out of my bedroom, out of the toilet into his room, and he was naked. And I was just like, I'm going home. Because I'd never kissed a boy. I was like, no, this is not for me. Like, I'm going home. Told him I was going home, and then he spread like rumours around the school about me being like frigid, saying that, like, obviously he didn't make up that I'd like done anything, but and then for the rest of school I was just like called that, and it's such a classic example of like, you can't win, because she was the opposite end, where she was out shagging everyone, and I don't want to.
What you suffered is a short-term thing, you see.
Yeah.
What you're suffering when you're, and it doesn't just go for any kind of sexual activity. I mean, it's anything where people are sensible. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the playground. If you're sensible, you're boring, you're a dweeb, you're a geek, you're a bookworm, you're whatever. But as we sit here now, as a 20-year-old, you know, you've managed to, you know, in the long game, in the macro view of all of this, you have managed to maintain a sense of self and a sense of dignity and a reputation that you know, and not that you've, you know, tried to play a game and not get caught in the weeds of whatever. It's just your dignity. You were strong enough to stick with your dignity and not get dragged along with the culture of the crowd.
Yeah, it wasn't even that. It was just like, I didn't even think of it like that. I didn't think like, I genuinely just didn't feel comfortable with like anything to do with boys. Like, I didn't feel like, it made me really anxious, and I think that I actually think that must be how every 14-15-year-old girl must feel, because that feeling of like I was so lucky. Obviously, like, met my first boyfriend, and you know, it was all sort of like ideal situation, but I was so lucky that I didn't feel any pressure from him. And Millie had the exact same experience as me, but I think like I do know girls that did feel pressure, and that did, and a lot of that came from boys being like, oh well, my friends have slept with their girlfriends, like why am I like the only one that's a virgin, kind of thing. And that again is like this whole cultural thing that's like put on boys, that boys have to be having sex like young, but why?
I tell you what always baffled me, even when I was at school, you know, why is it that girls are slags but lads aren't?
Yeah, that is literally.
How does that work?
It's
she's the right slag. Well, yeah, but
you had sex with her.
It's just like, what? I always thought that was strange.
Yeah, it's something that really bothers me, like, massively. I mean, I've never been in a position where I've been on like the end of that anyway. Like,
That's such a British word as well, by the way. Slag, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a British word.
Yeah.
Slag.
Or like, slut.
Yeah. That would be more American.
That's more American, yeah. Like, I'm not in a position to be on the receiving end of that anyway, but I noticed that so much at uni. It was like, there's this one girl a few floors above me, and she was crazy. She is crazy. She's one of the girls in the sorority house. She's very rich, very, very rich. You know, lives in North Kensington in London.
Used to get in her own way.
Daddy's girl, South African, like, crazy money. She's got everything you could ever want. And she...
Happiness?
And no, she's not happy, but she slept with, like, I don't think I could find a boy on campus that she didn't sleep with.
Okay.
Like, everyone knew her because she slept with them, and it was like just this, like, she pissed me off for many reasons. It was never that she slept with loads of people. She was just fucking annoying. And yeah, she's just a lot. And
Well, do you think she's got her own issues though, Georgia?
no,
Do you
no,
think-
no. Now, yeah, I know she has, and I was always nice to her, and I would always be nice to her.
That money thing, where we've got money and we make that, like we said you said at the beginning of this podcast, we make an assumption. Maybe she's got rich parents who maybe didn't have time for it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like I know she's got issues. Like she's definitely got like some sort of eating disorder, and she threw a sandwich at my head.
She didn't want to eat it.
She didn't like me, so she threw a sandwich at my head out the window.
Okay.
Because she thought that I was like, I fancied. Oh, so stupid. Anyway,
Politics of growing up
it was
as
just
young
one
people.
of the things. She thought that the boy she liked me, he didn't, and so she threw a sandwich at my head.
Okay.
So that's why I don't like her.
Okay.
But I will always be polite to her. I'll always like speak to her and stuff if I have to. But yeah, and she is just the way people, like even other girls, it was like, oh my God, she's a massive slag. Like other girls would say that, and that would be their reason for not liking her. But it's like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Like,
but a lot of that's insecurity and.
Oh no,
and,
definitely with women it is
and
insecurity.
And again, you said something earlier, which women doing things not necessarily to actually please men, but actually to kind of maintain position with other women.
Yeah, well, it's like that whole idea of, I definitely felt like this when I was younger. The whole idea of like, you have to hate your boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. You can't be friends. That's the idea. It's like in society, you have to hate them. You have to hate them, and I felt like that when I got with Aiden.
Think about that, though, right? Think about that. If this person, that you really care about, let's say even love, right, and they made a decision before you were around, and they spent time with this other person, you actively taking a position to hate them off the bat based on nothing other than your own insecurity, your own kind of disposition of, being in fear of, oh, what's that other person got that I haven't, or what have you. What's really happening is, and how we should be looking at it, if we can muster the ability to, to look at it objectively, is that this person probably must have value. This person, because I, for instance, my partner that I'm with now, that I really love, that I really see these, wonderful parts of their personality and these endearing elements of who they are, they've seen this, and maybe even, let's go as far as saying this other person might have things that are similar to me. We might be similar.
Yeah.
So that I think that, again, that's the culture, like off the bat, like the competition edge, the peer pressure is just like there off the bat, right, find reasons. And in the end, you carry that weight yourself. Yeah,
and I think like when I was younger, because I'd grown up with like, my mum being like very, my mum is quite insecure, like she is. And there was a lot of comments like about my dad's wife, about like Alex when I was young, and as a kid you absorb it and you're like, yeah, okay, maybe that's true. But then as I definitely felt like I had to be like that when I got with like Aiden. Like Rob didn't have a girlfriend before me, I was his first girlfriend. But when like I got with Aiden, I felt like, oh, I have to dislike Ruby. But like obviously I grew up and I realised like I don't have to dislike that person. That is just something that I felt like I felt like that's normal. Yep. And then now me and her are really good friends because actually we're quite similar people. Like, well,
exactly like I said.
We've got things in common. We get on, and she's not my best friend, but she's one of my good friends.
But
and I will spend time with her.
As you move through your life, right? If you were to kind of hold people in this abhorrent esteem that they've wronged you in some way and the universe owes you because as you go through the years, that's a fucking heavy weight
and
that you are carrying, not them.
Yeah, and I even think now about like how that insecure that used to make me, but then now that I'm like over that, like have so many I have so many less. My insecurities are less, because
you're not projecting it out.
But yeah, I think I definitely I was lucky in a lot of senses that I had so many women around me, like so many different women. I had probably the main women in my life would be obviously my mum, Helen, Alex, my nan. Yeah, probably them 4 women, which, as you know, couldn't be any more different. All 4 of them in personalities, in values, in like everything. Had like my nan, very passive, very loving, forgiving. Like, you know, I remember throwing a poppy coaster. My nan had these coasters that my Auntie Zoe got her for like her birthday. It was like her 50th birthday. And I was going through that angry phase of like just angry at the world. And I launched one across the room and it broke. And I just remember my nan picking it up, putting it back where it was and just not speaking. And like, I knew how upset that would make her. That's why I did it. But she was so forgiving and so loving that she couldn't even bring herself to like tell me off, because her empathy was there for how I was feeling. Okay. So she like prioritised how I felt.
So how did that make you feel in that moment? Did you then feel guilty, or did you feel...
Yeah, I went to bed and cried because I knew how upset she was. Because I wanted her to shout at me, but she didn't shout at me, because I think she knew that's what I was trying to do as well, was to just get a reaction.
And she understood where you were. So really it was an act of...
My nan definitely taught me patience, like with everyone. Like, and I think there's an element of my nan where I learned there's a difference between patience and selflessness and like being completely taken advantage of.
And being available.
That's something I learned, and I think I definitely, like, my mum is the complete opposite. So that, from both of them, balanced me as a person. Like, I got my nan's very like forgiving, loving, patient side, but then I do have this side of me with my mum, which is very like, when I need to be, very selfish and I'm quite fiery when I want to be. And like, my friends always say that when I'm fiery, they get like anxious because they know that you have to push me to 100. Aidan will probably disagree, be like, no, you like that every day. Right. My friends would say that you'd have to push me to like the maximum for me to behave like that. And that's because there's a balance there, whereas mum is like literally just short fuse, gone. Like you just pull the pin out and that's it. So I like both of them. And then I have someone like Alex, who's very, and Helen as well,
they're probably the most similar.
Yeah, who are very sort of like liberal, very free thinking, very
maternal,
celebratory of like of women, of you, of like your individual differences, and also very like, Helen is very hard. She's very hard, and she's very, you know, I was talking to my dad about this recently. It was like, he told me she was upset, and I said, well, I didn't even know she was upset. How am I supposed to know she's upset if she's not going to tell me? But he was like, oh, she doesn't like you guys to see her upset. And then I thought about it. I've never seen her upset in my life. Like, I've seen Helen cry once, and it was because of me, and she had a drink. So, you know, but Helen never, you don't see her sad.
She's a proper matriarch, though. She's holding everything together.
She's just stone. She's just rock hard. And then you've got like Alex, where Alex, I suppose, me and Alex like talk about feelings. Like, if she's having a bad day, then she'll be like, this is why I'm having a bad day. And then like, we can talk about feelings, and then it kind of just, feelings become less like intense,
scary,
and more like, actually, I'm fine, like, it's actually normal to feel like this right now, kind of thing. So having all them women around you that are so different, like, as I've got older, I've been so grateful for that, because I definitely started to pull away from some things that I learnt from my mum, like like picking people apart, or
I learned that from my mum. That's one thing that I still struggle with, just criticism.
Yeah, and I do too. Like, I find it hard. Like, I think about it. I like Florence Given's book again. Like, she did a whole chapter on this, and she spoke about, you know, one of the most uncomfortable things you can ever do is, it's so easy to look at someone and think, oh, they look like shit, because that makes you feel better. But the hardest thing to do is think, what have they got that I haven't? Like, what have they got? And whatever they've got that I haven't got, I'm going to go and get, because, you know, that's the issue here. So it can be like I've definitely done it with girls that are really assertive, and I find it really hard to assert myself. Like, I will have this thing in my head for months where it's like, oh, like, do I look like a bitch? Like, do I look like a bad person? Are they telling everyone that I'm really like horrible? Like, that's how I think when I've asserted myself.
Yep.
So when I see other girls that are like, no, don't do that, or asserting themselves in whatever way, I think, oh my God, what a bitch. But actually, that is what I wish I could do without all the guilt of doing that.
Yeah, but I think you're at an age where all of this, you're displaying a lot of introspection and a lot of internal work on yourself, and even in the way that you describe having those 4 women in your life. There's pros and cons from all of them, but what I give you credit for is that you are conscious enough to actually be paying attention, because there's lots of us that are just moving through life. We're not paying attention. We're not learning anything. We're not making any progress in any way whatsoever. And so that's a credit to you, but it's not easy. I mean, that criticism thing you talk about, or having a mum who's
imposter syndrome,
who's very kind of definitive and matter of fact, and not so easy to communicate with. That's something that I've lived with my whole life, and it's on the one hand it's heartbreaking because you're just so aware of what you're missing in the way of being able to communicate, like you said, in I guess being able to talk about feelings and just knowing it's all right without judgment or without some kind of reprimand or something. I've never had that, and I often wonder, for me personally, I must have been paying attention, because I've tried and I try and I am trying all the time to try and when those bits of me come out, and you know me a little bit, when we're having fun and the banter comes out, and I work on a building site, banter and kind of being quick-witted and just the lads ripping holes in each other, I'm really good at that.
Well,
and that's why
I'm like that,
because I've been batting it off for my whole life. So you just learn to just find the gaps, and I'm not proud of that, and I'm getting better at not doing it. But man, it's conditioning. It's difficult. It
is so hard. It's so. I think the reason that everyone says that about it's a lot of do use introspection a lot, especially for someone who's only 20. That's what I get a lot. But I think for me, it was I've said this to Helen. She was like, fucking hell, I don't even think about myself as much as you think about yourself. But I said it comes from years and years of genuine unhappiness, not teenage unhappiness, severe, trauma,
not knowing yourself,
deep depression at a young age. So then I think I just got to a point where I was I never want to feel like that again, and I need to take some accountability for how I feel, because it is mental health is something I'll always struggle with. I think we all do, but it's definitely one of the best things for me has been unraveling, I think, the way I think and the way that I behave and the way that I do things that make myself unhappy. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that negative to all the time. I know I'm not going to be positive all the time.
No, of course.
But I would like to be
realistic.
Balanced. Not just be someone that's constantly pissed off or that's just not nice to be around.
That's might be my battle, because I can certainly be that.
I know I can be but I think 90% of the time I can take myself away when I'm being that person, so I can sit in my room.
Well, that's good at your age. That's a good inroad to the future, because that awareness at your age, it took me. I was probably 27 before I started even having thoughts and trying to put that into perspective. But I know, as we start to bring this home, I do know, obviously, only too well, that you use art as a therapy, you use art as an outlet, as a exercise in that disappearing into yourself and expressing yourself. And so how's that for you? How did that come around, and when did you realise that there was some kind of catharsism in just painting? Obviously you did drama as a kid, you did a lot of drama, as you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, with being reasonably well spoken for where we live and so on. So what did it feel like when you realised you could disappear when you were doing art and sort of get some kind of feeling back?
I don't think I really realised for a long time that was what I was doing. But I think for me, it actually ironically came from being able to use my experiences to make art, to actually share them on social media, to make other people realise that they're not on their own, because that's something I missed as a kid.
Okay, yeah, so similar to your conversation with somebody that you can have an open dialogue with, you're kind of putting it out there through that. Yeah,
and in a way, putting it through into art kind of actually depersonalises me.
Makes it more
so
universal.
it takes me out of it. And then someone else can look at, I don't know, like a graphic that I did, and they can be like, oh, I resonate with that. And then, and like, ironically, that was actually when I did start to think. I posted, I made like an Instagram page, and I haven't posted on it for ages because I've just had no motivation to. But when I literally so quickly I didn't really expect anyone to actually have an impact on anyone. Genuinely, hand on heart, didn't.
Just doing it for yourself.
And just like a little diary. And I always used to think to myself, I really wish that there was someone out there that was on this thing that everyone's on, and they were talking about it candidly rather than talking about the fact that they have recovered and they have got over it and how amazing their life is now. Because I don't want to know how fucking amazing your life is now. I want to know how you're getting through it. Like, I would like to feel like I am not the only person in the world. Like, I see, these so many people. I mean, there are people with less followers, like myself, that are amazing, and they're very they research, they're very factual in what they post. It's very helpful, resourceful. But then there are people that are like the people that do gain the big following. It's very, very aesthetically pleasing. It's very
orchestrated and manicured.
And it just felt like just that having these feelings and like struggling with body image and things like that like it almost was romantic for me. I definitely felt like that. And then I thought, well, if I start doing these pictures, because I have so many things inside my head that I would love to be able to find like-minded people without having to put myself out there too much, without making myself too vulnerable, which was then the drawing. So the drawing is not me, but I've done it, and I can still share how I feel without, like, I don't know, like my nan, I think I did post something about my birthmarks. There is a picture of me on there now, but like that was the whole intention. Was I like the idea that I can be myself still. Like,
classic art as it is, expression through the page, and then the viewer takes away their own interpretation, their own narrative, their own feeling, and that's art in its most wonderful capacity for my money. And if you're getting your catharsis and it's helping you, and I say this, I've said this to you recently, Aidan, didn't I? Don't pick up the guitar and be desperate to learn the next fucking crazy descending whatever it is. Just play it, and then realise you've been gone for 40 minutes just playing the guitar, because that's really good for you.
Well, that's like why I think I haven't made anything recently. It's just because I haven't felt like I needed to.
Yeah, well, that's good.
It's just like, But another thing I was going to say is, I think I'm thinking about it. I think it actually started the whole like me realising it was cathartic was probably at A-level. I did a whole project on, you probably remember I painted loads of pictures of Alex, didn't I? Like pregnant and stuff. Yeah,
female form and all that.
Yeah, I did so I noticed that the things that I was seeing everywhere, on TV, on social media, in magazines, even in art galleries, was just these either extremely thin, like unattainable figures, or really big. I was never seeing like anyone over the age of 30, anyone who had children, anyone who had acne, anyone who, like, real people. I wasn't seeing real people. I was seeing like even the big people were like tiny waist, tiny toned waist, like huge curves, like just like
big bum,
I've
big
never
boobs.
seen anyone like that in my life walking down the high street. I haven't, and I probably never will. But I didn't know that. So I started to think about that more. And then my art teacher had 3 kids within like 4 years. So she really pushed me to start exploring it. And so then when I started painting like women, I started to think, like, I really enjoyed doing it. And I started to think, wow, they're like women in every form. I wish my nan had let me paint her. She wouldn't, but I really wanted to. And like, even just when we were talking about it, I realised, like, my nan, so sad. She was like, I've never been on the beach in a swimming costume without shorts on. And I said, why? She was like, because I don't want people to see me. But why? Because in my head, I don't look at her and think like, oh, you should never go out in a swimming costume. And I don't think anyone on this planet would ever look at her and think, well, don't go out in a swimming costume. But she's never done that.
That's interesting.
And that's
of her generation.
Mind-blowing. mind blowing for me. I was like, what? But why? And then I realised I was that person too. Like, I remember going to Mexico in 2000. I just finished my GCSEs, so probably 2015 or 16. And sitting in the room every day because I didn't want to go out in my bikini. I was so anxious about going out because it was like we were there for 3 weeks and I spent 2 of them 3 weeks in the room. Just like, I didn't have a phone, so I was watching things on YouTube. Like, I was watching the Victoria's Secret show every day.
So
just wishing that I looked like that. Yeah,
God.
just so upset. And like, that's probably one of the things that, like, if I talk about it now or think about it now, me feeling like that and me being like that made me like so manipulative to a point that I don't even
in what
recognize.
way? That's interesting. So in what
Yeah,
way do
like,
you think? What, manipulating where you...
Not in like a classic, like, making me, like, manipulating...
Others for your benefit, but manipulating your way out of things, around things.
So that I didn't have to be put in that position of, like... And I think
exposing yourself.
I was so good at it that I don't think anyone even noticed at the time. I think Alex was the only person I think that ever said anything to me. And was like, you're not, why are you like... and the whole... I remember saying I was vegan. And that was because my dad had said... He had said to me, if you ever go vegan, I'm not buying you vegan food. And so you'll have to starve. And I was like, okay. And I said that I was like, Dad, I'm vegan. And he was like, for fuck's sake, like, I've told you, if you go vegan, you're going to have to starve. And I was like, So, but
I think that's part of what happens,
my
isn't it?
dad, being my dad and how he is, took me to the shop and got me vegan food. But I think I just got tomato soup. And
so was it more of a kind of
it was more of a control thing, I think. Yeah,
sort of a wild swing in the...
But then it was like, it started like that, but then it was, I think looking back now, it was massively was just the way I looked. I was like, last time I like spoke to Rob even, he was kind of saying like he used to think it was really weird how much time I would spend in the mirror.
Right.
Like, I would always say things like, oh, I'm so like, I would pick myself apart, and that, like, I found pictures on my phone of times when I thought that I was really overweight, and it's like sad because I was like, I've never been overweight.
What's the barometer for that though? What are you measuring that against in particular? Is that other friends, people you're actually living and walking the earth with, or is this people through the television, through movies, through pop culture?
Yeah, like I remember Rob like followed this girl on Instagram. She's called Summer Rae. She's like a really famous model.
Of course.
And she's
not called Rain, Shitty Grey Day and
she
Maybo.
Was just like, wow.
Yeah, of course.
And I remember looking at it and I was like, I'm never going to look like that, and he's never going to fancy me if I never look like that.
Right.
And that was like...
So we're back here again.
It was so fucking weird.
That accelerated thing now is just...
I found that a study that showed that 26% of all people with anorexia and bulimia, women with anorexia and bulimia, in this research study that was done in the UK, said that they attributed their anorexia and bulimia to Facebook or Instagram. So that's like over a quarter of people with an eating disorder. And that's just
them who admit it.
And that's just anorexia and bulimia which get diagnosed. There's also like lots of other eating disorders, which I think was definitely my issue, that were they can't diagnose because it's so broad, the spectrum of like, for me it was just controlling when I ate, what I ate, and who I ate in front of. So I'd eat in front of family, but I would never, when I used to go out Rob for dinner, I wouldn't eat. I would just be like, but Alex said she was the same when she was that age. She wouldn't eat when she was out in public.
With boys?
Yeah. And I just wouldn't. And then with friends, like if we went to Nando's, I would only get chicken. I wouldn't get like chips. I would only get chicken.
But then go home and eat a pack of Jammy Dodgers or something?
No, and then I would go home and feel like shit because I'd eaten the chicken. And then I'd tell my dad that I'd eaten more than I had. So it was just like anything I could get away with.
It's so strange, man. We need to turn the internet off. That's my summation. We've got to turn the internet off for kids, man. We can't have kids just getting overwhelmed in this weird digital constructed world that isn't really the world. It's so messed up at this point. It really is.
Yeah, it's weird. But it is weird to think of myself then and myself now, because now if I don't eat, I feel like I'm like the devil.
So how is it for you then? Just finally, how is it for you as now somebody moving into your young womanhood proper? 21 soon, next birthday. So how is it for you looking back at? You've got younger sisters. You've got 4 younger sisters, varying from 3 years old up to 16 years old. So how do you see them now and those varying stages and the development comparatively to what you knew, and what do you see in the future? When your youngest sister is 16, what do you foresee?
I don't even want to think about what it's going to be like for the youngest 2 and 8. It's like, I couldn't even tell you. For the one that's 15 now, I see me in her. I see that, like, the makeup, the hair, the nice clothes, the bravado. But then at home, all she does is sits in her room, sleeps and eats rich tea biscuits. That's literally it. It's what she does. And it's scary because you can't. She spends 10 hours roughly a day on her phone, and I think.
Is that in social media, or is that
it will
listening
be.
to music?
No,
and stuff?
It'll be on social media with her. It will be, and it's really scary because I can already see that slippery slope of like self-loathing starting in her, exactly the same way as it was with me. Very quiet, very manipulative. I don't like that food. I'm not that hungry. I've eaten a massive lunch today, when actually she told me she never spends her lunch money, she saves it. And it's like, I used to save my lunch money too, but I don't know if it's for the same reason. And you can see it, it's the pressure, it's the she always talks about, I can't wait till I turn 18 so I can get filler. Well, you're fucking 15. You've literally just turned 15. Yeah, to make her.
I thought you said fella.
Lips like mine. She's got literally lips like mine, full lips.
Natural
she wants
lips.
them done. She's got amazing skin, nice jawline.
Oh, that's an whole other world.
She wants her boobs doing when she's 18. She wants all these. And it's I didn't think like that.
No.
I just wanted to be thinner. That's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be thinner, and I wanted to have a better face shape. That's what it was for me.
Is that not an example though of the speed of change?
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, how things.
The exponential rate now of technology getting a hold of industry, getting a hold of, the reins of our vanity. And we accept it because after so long, Botox doesn't seem wacky, doesn't seem mad, does it? Having Botox,
no, it's normal now.
It's just like going to the dentist, having Botox. It's like going on a sunbed or something. It's just normal, and it is just normal. But then what's next? And what's next? And now things like, breast implants and any kind of implant, we're now, long enough in terms of science to see some of the long-term effects of it. Autoimmune diseases that seem to just be hand in hand now with this kind of thing. So young girls, 18, who just, bless them, don't know anything about who they are really yet. Not really, and certainly not if they've been preoccupied for 5 years about wanting to be something else other than they are. And then changing your body. Once upon a time when you were a kid and you were 17 and you had all these feelings, I'm not in with the guys, I feel a dummy, they're all into that band and they all wear those clothes. You could go out and you could get a jacket. You could get your hair cut.
Yeah.
You could do all the things
to
temporarily do and be with the gang. Now, you stick stuff in your lips or in your breasts or in your buttocks, or you're changing things that they're not that easy to get back, if at all. Never mind what's going to be triggered chemically, foreign chemical input in your body. It's a fucking choice to be made, as you mentioned before. When your frontal cortex matures, when you're in your mid-20s and you're kind of making decisions as an adult, go for whatever you want to go for. But when you're 18, Man,
I
you can't turn that round.
I know, it's scary. It's really scary. It's just, I wish someone had been, when I was younger, I wish I'd been taught in school about how my body was going to change from 16 to 20. I think that's been one of the hardest things, especially when you're like, I think I'll always probably struggle with food. Like, it's just, it is an issue. It always will be. I still feel like that now at times. And I know a lot of people that I've spoke to are exactly the same, a lot older than me, that's still, it's just, it's like, I was saying this to you earlier, we don't have full body mirrors in our house. No, none of us have it.
You mentioned it. Yeah, with the girls you live with at university.
And one of the others had anorexia at school. And none of us have one. So, and that has been like probably one of the best things. I think the times I feel the worst about myself are when I'm like at home, like, because I can actually see myself. But it's always going to be an issue. And I just wish someone had told me that how I looked at 16, I'm not going to look like that when I'm 20. You know, like, it's like really hard. And the amount of girls that say that to me, that they feel like that and that they feel like that. Like, men's bodies change, I get they do, but they don't change on the same level as women's bodies change. Like, our bodies, like, even
men's
like
bodies aren't referred to as, unfortunately, so sexualized. Men's bodies aren't used so much. Not the man's body is not the doesn't have the cultural.
It doesn't have the sexual value.
Hard sell of a
body.
Female figure,
Yeah.
You know, yes, it is used. Aftershave this and you know, we want to sell manly products and chiseled men are there. Of course they are.
Yeah.
But the very expectation of male sexuality versus female sexuality is dictates that, you know,
Yeah.
right?
It massively does, yeah. So and it's just, I think that if I ever have a daughter, I think she will be very aware of biologically how much she's going to change, and like even like tiny things like when you get your period every month, that you actually do on average gain like a quarter of a stone in that month because your like boobs swell up or you get water retention.
Hormones completely change.
But like for me, someone like me, this is an example of why we should know this. Like, for 2 weeks before my period, I get all them things. Right. For 2 weeks.
Yes.
So I like feel like shit for 2 weeks before. Then once it's happened, I'm fine.
That's a nightmare. That's like half the year, isn't it?
And
that's
I'm sick.
two of every 4 weeks.
And I'm sick and passing out.
That's 6 months of feeling
when
like
I actually
shit.
get my period.
Yeah,
so it's like
that's
the
heavy.
hell,
That's
yeah.
heavy, yeah.
But no one told me that could potentially happen when I was at school. You know, and that we need to be teaching girls that they, you know, how diverse the range of development is. We need to be teaching that, and we need to also be teaching boys too. We need to teach boys and girls about it, because they don't understand each other. You leave school and you know fuck all about fuck all about a girl, and I don't know a lot about a boy, but we need to learn about each other, because
that curriculum,
the respect comes in then it's that's why they're behaving like that, or that's why they feel like that, or that's why, you know, I learnt about wet dreams and this boy fancying Jennifer Aniston. That's why I learned about sex education at
school.
Yes.
So
and I'll never forget that.
So educating children, and again on this podcast I've made this argument for schools where we've missed the boat, and again, as I mentioned earlier today, you know, academia kind of drawing the line in the sand about curriculum and you know, the structure of learning that gets passed on through generations. You know, time change, culture changes, now more so than ever. I've alluded to it, and I believe this. We should be teaching those simple things. Health, physiology. And when I've talked about physiology, when I've talked about, you know, the way we sell sugar to our children, like disguised in everything, you know, and all of our children have got ADHD, deficit, you know, of this attention, deficit of that behaviour, all of these issues. We do need to get back to some kind of really simple and straight up honest, and sometimes difficult conversations, but they're the ones that are going to put in the padstones, the foundations for something solid to be built upon that. And we need to do that on top of guiding these gadgets out of young people's hands, because all the while where we're not keeping up with the culture, with our education, with curriculum, with learning, with teaching young people, we're also accelerating the complete other end of the scale by giving them this kind of free-wielding device and access to all this other information that is completely spinning them out in the wrong direction entirely.
Yeah. I think it is that hard, because that I know for me, like, social media and the internet have helped me in like unimaginable ways, in a way that school, like my parents being how they are, like could never have helped me. But then, it's really hard, because it's finding the balance and knowing how to use it. And a lot of the time kids just don't. They just don't know how to use it. They don't know what's real, what's not. I think, like you have to put an ad when you have to disclaim that something's an advert when you promote it.
Yep.
I think you should have to put that you've edited a photo. Like that you've distorted the way you look. I think you should have to do that, because there's a difference between putting a filter on, like a black and white, or making it a little bit more blue, or making the sun a bit brighter. That is one thing.
Then a face tune.
That is something, and I do that. Yeah. I put a little filter on.
But you're not face tuning and changing the contours of your face.
No, and that's where that should be a legal requirement. We should be teaching boys just as much as girls that people don't fucking look like that, because then you've got boys that are dissatisfied with every girl that they come across,
and girls,
and then you've got girls that are just like, well, I'm not good enough, or so then their self-esteem's low, and then they land themselves in stupid relationships or in stupid situations,
and then babies are born, and then the generation,
they don't want that kid, and then it's like, damn it, another, and it's just like, it's just this endless cycle. And I think the only way that we're going to be that we can try and be more responsible is if people who have that power act more responsibly. And I think the only way they're going to is if they're told they have to. I think
you're definitely right, Georgia. I think as we conclude this, and thank you, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed getting into the mind's eye of a millennial, let's call you, somebody in a generation that's dealing with this change, this hyper change, digital, technological, the pandemic on top. But yeah, I think regulation is something that I keep coming back to with these phones. We're talking about, all these laws and all these things we can and can't do with one another. I think, it's hidden in plain sight. These things are remapping everything human about us, and we have to pay reverence to that. There is a lot of benefit to this technology.
Yeah,
there is so much benefit, but we have to have our eyes open. And young people are, as I mentioned at the start, these things are magical, but we're celebrating ourselves, but we're destroying ourselves as well, and we have to really pay mind to that. And on this podcast, we will continue to have that conversation, and it's something that I'm working on all the time. My wife's working on all the time. I'm scared to death of my children. I'm trying to just find the healthiest ways to just have a rhetoric, have some kind of narrative I can talk with my kids at this age that stays consistent. That the older they get, I can bring them in and we can turn it into a dialogue, and we can actually converse about why it is we protect them. And we have started to use terms like we teach them about healthy food, so you can have your treats, you can have the sugary thing, whatever it is, but we are healthy food first, and that's really important because of our health, because we need to be healthy. And Alex and I have started to do this now with the phones and with the games, because they've got games and they're at that age, like I say, where they're not necessarily outright asking for it, but they go to so-and-so's, well, they used to go to so-and-so's house, and they've got one and they're their age, and their cousin's got one and they're now at school and so on. So we're now saying, look, we haven't got these, and we're not using these like necessarily your friends are, because it's our mental health, and it's just as important, and we're trying to find the ways to communicate that idea through to them, because that's what it is. What you put in your brain, what you put in your mind, what you load onto your hard drive, which is what you draw on to process your experience of life, that's your mental diet. And it's just as important as what you're putting in your physical body, and we're really trying to open that up now, and I think that's what we've got to do as a culture. I think you bang on the money. I think some kind of regulation, some kind of responsibility has to be taken, and we have to not look at these things as some kind of, I've got the latest iPhone with the gold, whatever it is, limited edition thing, and you're swinging it around in the park. I mean, I've seen kids in my park, 7-8-year-old girls, you know, and it's so confusing because you see them on the little push bikes, you know, and they're playing whatever game they're playing and they're chasing each other around, and then all of a sudden they stop and then they're all, you know, lost in the phone, and then there's a pile of phones kind of at the side of the swing, and I can only take a bit of I don't know, appreciation for the fact that they're actually on the swing still at this moment, but next year they won't be on the swing, they'll be on the bench, you know, and that's really frightening. So we need to take responsibility for these things. But you know, I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you and your artwork?
Well, it's a bit dead at the moment, but my Instagram account is called like Planet Georgie. Wait, let me check. I think it's just with an I.
It's in your fucking hand again, Georgia.
Yeah, it's for a reason. I've only been on it 40 minminutes today, and I've been awake since.
No, I'll give you that.
8 o'clock.
That's probably better than me.
Oh yeah, Planet. So it's Planet. It's Planet.
Planet
_ Georgie.
Yes.
But it's spelled like just an I, no E.
Georgie, yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've got some of your graphic design and some of these expressions of this conversation that we've had that you've kind of been putting out there to share with other people like-minded.
I'm still on the journey with it, but it's getting better.
Hey, listen, we're always on the journey. That's what we do know, and this little family that we're building at Chew the Chat, we're in it together. Nobody knows what the fuck's going on. When you're a kid, right, and you know this now, you're 20 years old. I've been in your life since you were 1, right? That 16 age you talk about, you kind of think, right, I've got an handle on it now, yeah? Oh, no, when I become an adult, when I become an adult, I know what's going to be. And you get to being an adult, and you're not quite there, but you're pretty much there on an intelligence level. But your experience will just click in, and you just go, fuck. Nobody knows what's going on. Not the headmaster that I used to think was this, not the scientist that I used to read was that. No fucker. No president, nobody knows what's going on. We are in the eye of chaos, and we need to just remember that and be there for one another and look after one another. So
definitely.
Thank you, darling.
It's okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Peace.